and welcome back to the first episode of the Still Bones Amputee Pod. We're kicking off Series 2, talking about travel and people's experience of accessible travel. I have with me Allison, Gary and Emma, who are going to share their experience of travelling with amputations. So if I can ask you just to go through and introduce yourselves, and if you're comfortable sharing what kind of amputation you have or your experience of it and what kind of needs you have when you're travelling. Allison, should we start with you?
Hello, I'm Allison. I'm a quadruple amputee, below knee on both sides and below elbow on both sides. So I'm lucky at this point, and because my needs in terms of travel are largely wants. I have a collapsible power chair. I can walk small distances. I can stand for a bit and do some stairs if I need to as well. So the only thing I absolutely need at the minute is a gender-free accessible toilet.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised in how many places where the accessible toilets are actually within the female toilets or the male toilets. And when you have your husband who's travelling with you, who's helping you go to the toilet, it's interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Gary, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Gary, retired from my long career. I do a reasonable amount of travelling, both in the UK and overseas. And I'm a single leg amputee right below the knee. Generally, I get around pretty well. And pretty much the only thing I really need that's kind of out the ordinary when travelling is a stool in the shower so that I can have a proper shower with my leg off.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think we probably all know Emma, but just in case, Emma, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm wife of Lee Joystains, who's a single leg amputee below the knee, and he also has a club foot on the other leg and triple fuse, so that brings its own little issues there as well. But we set up Still Bones, and I think this podcast is a perfect example as to why we did Still Bones, really, in terms of wanting to share and hear from others. And to know that, yeah, we can travel, like it's fine.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit different, but it is absolutely fine to do that. We've always loved travelling. And since Lee's amputation, I think we went to Bulgaria within the first year. And we partied quite hard over in Bulgaria. That was before we had children. And we've ended up in the Caribbean and Florida, Disney, and we love travelling. We've done Amsterdam as well, which was good fun. The needs really that we have are, to be honest, Lee being very realistic with what is possible, because he will push himself. I do not need help. I am fine. And then boom, crashing down to reality and is injured in some way. So I'll go through some other bits, but I think being very straight, knowing your limit, and trying not to patronise as a wife as well, and make sure, I don't want him to feel like he's my child. He definitely isn't. But it's important to remind people that be careful, because being a little bit more careful enables you to do so much more.
Absolutely. Again, I just sort of thought I haven't actually introduced myself. So I'm Vicki. I have a single below knee amputation on my right side, and I did a lot of travelling as a child as like part of the family unit. Went on quite a mad trip on my own in my sort of late 20s, mid 20s, and then I came back, life took over, had children, all of that. But I have never lost the bug for travelling. I absolutely love it. And earlier this year, took myself off on my first solo trip for quite a long time, which was a bit of an eye-opener and a reminder of things I need to think about. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great podcast, this one, where we can share those experiences. I think we've all got a lot that we can offer for it. So that's really great. Thank you, everyone. So starting off, what advice would you give to someone planning their first trip after an amputation? Gary?
Well, when I think to my first trip, mobility was very limited. Obviously, make sure the holiday insurance is good and covers you, because one time I went to Tenerife and I got an infection in my stump and couldn't wear my leg and ended up having to hire a electric wheelchair for a few days, so which was all covered under insurance, as well as the medical bills. So that's really important. And I think the other kind of things really is make sure that you manage your sweating on your stump. I always take a microfiber like duster towel or something like that, because, it really does get quite sweaty, and being able to take it off and dry it out means you're a lot less likely to get infection, and it gets really uncomfortable when it's really sweaty as well.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Gary. Alison, any top tips from you?
I've taken a completely different tack on this one.
Perfect.
So I've put, if possible, don't travel on your own the first time. And I think that's just because there's a comfort there in having somebody in case something goes wrong, until you get your confidence that you're going to be able to do it on your own. Do lots and lots and lots of research and planning. You have to think of every detail. And the other one is, don't assume somewhere is accessible just because the advert says it is.
Yeah.
Because accessibility means different things to different people. So
absolutely.
My son booked me a hotel stay, and on the website it said it was accessible. When I actually went to ring and book it, accessible meant that the bedroom was big enough for you to put your wheelchair in. Nothing else. Nothing was changed in the bathroom, grab rails or anything else. But they classed it as being accessible. So you just need to be a bit careful on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Emma, any ideas?
Yeah, I think the planning and preparation that Alison said is absolutely key. And we've been to a number of places where it's told us it's accessible, or this is only a few minutes down the road and it's quite different. I think certainly try not to take all the help that you can get. So I realise Lee was very against booking airport assistance, and didn't really book it until, I don't think we even had it when we went on our honeymoon. I think he only started using it maybe 5 years ago, something like that. Well, they are incredible, absolutely incredible. I know there are different stories, and certainly in different countries they vary. But book it up, and often we will go on a caravan as well, not just talking abroad, but Lee will say, no, I don't need the accessible caravan, Emma. Just book it, because you don't know the amount of times I've not booked it. If you don't book it, you won't need it. If you don't book it, you will need it. And if you do, you won't. It's kind of that way. And it just takes a whole pressure off the family. I know particularly my kids, if they see that daddy's getting help, he makes a joke of it. He's like, I'm off. I'm being kidnapped by the airport. So we did lose him, actually, in one airport.
Oh, my goodness.
He came back. He was fine. But it's such a relief for me. Particularly when the children were younger, I've got the buggy and I know what he was doing. As many amputees, you don't want to add on extra faff. I'd rather you be sorted and I can focus on the kids and getting through, and we'll be sorted. But I get it. Amputees are incredibly stoical, so I do get it. But please do just consider. And if you don't want to have it, maybe think if your partner or family members also want you to have it. So just take all the help you can get, particularly the first time of doing it. I think the first time we came through the Bulgaria airport, which I think we're going to go on to Vicki, was Lee was taken out into a private room and strip searched because they did not understand prosthetics. Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about that. But,
yeah, wow. It's interesting what you were saying, Alison, as well, about even though it says it's accessible, just double check. Earlier this year, I took myself off for a couple of nights to the Isle of Wight, and I went onto the Airbnb website and found a lovely little cabin, and it said fully accessible. And I was looking at the pictures and I thought, oh yeah, no, looks good. And when I got there, the cabin itself was accessible, but to get to it, I had to go down sort of 5 little stone steps and then down quite a narrow path down the side of the house over stepping stones, and then across the wet grass on the garden, and then there were steps up to the cabin. I was like, once I'm in, it's lovely. But yes, just double check. And I know one of our lovely people from our community, Jackie, she sent me some top tips as well on travel. And one of the things she said was to find the place that you like, actually ring them. Don't book anything online. Ring and speak to the people, or really get a good, clear idea of what they mean when they say accessible. So yeah. So on that note, what do you look for when you're booking accommodation and transport? Alison?
Well, I tried to book accommodation with step-free access from the entrance to the room and to all the facilities. I looked for a wet room or rolling shower and shower chair and safety alarms, because interestingly, although we went to Spain a couple of weeks ago, and although it was an accessible room and it was great, the bathroom and everything else, there was no safety alarms in there. So if David had gone out and I'd been in on my own, I would have to relied on my watch or something like that to be able to get in. And then for transport, I always have to take my wheelchair because I can't walk huge distances, which is why we've got the collapsible one, and it's airline compliant with the batteries and things. But I always book passenger assistance in advance. Now, in theory, you can just turn up and go, but if you're doing a planned visit, it just isn't worth the stress of trying to do that. It really isn't, because it just throws them into a panic about trying to find people who can do this and that. So if you have to do it, if it's an emergency visit, then absolutely, you just do it. But if you're planning a trip, then I'd always book passenger assistance in advance.
Yeah. Okay. Gary, anything special you look for?
I guess, just being single leg, I'm not too bad, but it's having a bathroom with a space and a shower stall, though normally most normal hotels will provide them if you ask in a standard room, and you can use that then for perching when you're kind of having a wash of your bit. So I guess what I have done in the past is booked an accessible cabin on a cruise ship when in my earlier days of my amputation, when I was less mobile and things. And they're really good. But one thing I would say on accessible accommodation is you often have to book quite a lot in advance, because sometimes they're quite limited and, you need to book away in advance. So that's worth considering. Yeah.
I know, Emma, that you've spoken to me before and you mentioned it earlier about the accessible caravan. And I know you've said to me about it, and, it's great if you can book it. And the number of times I've tried to book that for a little holiday for me and my two boys, and they're just booked up. And on the whole caravan park, there's like 2-3 caravans that are accessible, and they get booked up really, really fast.
Yeah, and I would just add as well, the most annoying part about that is they're more expensive. And I find that absolutely frustrating. I've spoken to CEOs of Haven and also Park Dean. They won't budge. No matter what I say to them, they will not budge. This is absolute. I understand the business case. They are almost an upgrade because of your disability. I don't understand it. That's just my little rant. But I find it so frustrating. And you must book at least 12 months ahead, otherwise you just won't get one. Hence why you can't take that chance. I don't, because Lee has had to be in his wheelchair an awful lot. It can really hamper the holiday. You'd rather not take that chance and wait a month, because you won't get it if you suddenly need it. Rather just book it and then you're covered,
Yeah, absolutely. So what is one item that you never leave home without?
Gosh,
you're on the
actually, similar to what Gary was saying in terms of coping with the different weather, he will always have cooling towels. They're these little cooling towels. They're very cheap on Amazon, but you can soak them and they're just very good. Particularly in Florida, that was really, really helpful. And then these fans, Allison, I know you have one. I think it goes around your neck. I mean, the hot weather here now, to be honest, you need it, because we don't have any air conditioning in this country, do we? Really? So that hot stuff, because also when you're on the plane or the coach, it can be very, very hot. I know many amputees similar to Lee that since the amputation just are so hot, the temperature control. So he constantly almost has a fan on him. He does get really hot anyway. I'm a cold person. So those things we definitely don't leave without. Also the medication list, making sure you've got a prescription list, because some of the foreign airports, they will be like, why have you got MST? So, I take a lot of medication because I like to overtake, and it does look a little bit concerning to some, most of it anyway. But it's really important to just make sure you've got that letters. Bulgaria just didn't understand prosthetics. So just take any letters, blue badge if you've got it, and then certainly the different temperature control, and any extra socks. so that you can deal.
Yes.
You've got those extra ones, you know, just spare everything really, I think.
Yeah. And I suppose in different heats, you know, different weathers, you know, your leg may swell or your arm may swell, or, you know, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? The weather. So so having all those extra things just make sure that you're properly prepared. Gary, what about you? What's one thing you never leave home without?
I guess the blue badge is a good one, because certainly a lot of things will let you in with a blue badge free and without queuing. So you know, if I think about it, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, with a blue badge you go straight in, and the Acropolis in Athens was the same. So you know, that does help. Also some dry claw, which is a special not deodorant, but it stops you sweating. It's a roll-on, and that works really well in a hot country. It doesn't stop it completely, but it certainly eases it quite a lot. And a microfiber towel, I think, is the other thing. It's also worth considering if you have a spare prosthetic, because I went to Croatia once and I had my leg break when I was there. Well, the foot came loose, so you know, it was like 3 steps, move the foot back into position, another 3 steps. So it can ruin your holiday if you have a breakage like that.
Yeah. Alison, what about you?
Well, I was going to say fans and spare legs. So I guess for me now, it's my collapsible power chair. Because you never know. It's nice to think that you're going to go out, not necessarily, you know, on a long trip, but even if you're going out on a day trip, you know, sometimes you just get a lot more tired a lot quicker. So always having that there as a backup is good.
Good idea. So do you think the different places you've all visited, some, you know, Emma was saying could still be in England, but you've all been to lots of different places, Spain, Greece, America, all over. Have you noticed how attitudes towards limb difference vary in different places? I know, Emma, you were saying, you know, that first place you went, they just didn't understand it at all. So does it vary a lot, do you think, from place to place?
I mean, my experience certainly was Bulgaria. That was a bit of a shock to us because it was the first one. It was his first holiday, our first holiday since it, and they really didn't quite. And this is now, how many years ago was that? So that was 2009. So we're talking a little while ago now. Amputees were not, that was before 2012 Olympics, so they were not, certainly in British culture, I don't think, out there at all. And whether they are now in Bulgaria, I don't know. But yeah, they just took a different turn. But we just had to remain calm. I mean, he had about 5 gunmen on him.
Wow, my goodness.
Checking he was all right. It was all a bit like, what? So, yeah, I would definitely check that. Attitudes that we found in America were very, very different, but we were very much with Disney, you know, who are going to make sure you have so I wouldn't really take our experience. I mean, the airport in America, in Florida, the guy, I mean, we did have to tip him, obviously, but he was everything. He'd got all our bags, everything. So I would say they're almost over accommodating in America, but there's a tip program there, isn't there? So it's a bit different. But yeah, that Bulgaria is the most shocking one I've come across, I think.
Okay. What about you, Alison?
Well, I think at the minute we've only travelled to places that we think will be reasonably accessible. So, you know, UK, Spain, Netherlands and the States. And I kind of don't think, I've not thought about it in terms of the whole system as being, you know, what are the attitudes toward limb difference? I think I've very much kind of thought of it more along the lines of the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. And I think a lot of it is about that. So, you know, for example, when we travel down to London, the number of times you'll see a wheelchair in the tube is very, very, very small. Most people kind of look at you as if to say, you know, what are you doing there? You know, we're just not used to it. Or they will just ignore you or whatever. But then on the other hand, last time we came down, we'd got to a station and I had to do some steps because we didn't know that part of the station wasn't accessible. So I did some steps, but there was a lady who carried the wheelchair while David helped me. And there was a guy who, when I got to the top, stood and applauded me and said I was incredible, or words to that effect. So I think it always depends on the individuals.
Yeah.
It's like in the States, I was talking about gender-free accessible toilets, but in the States, it was a case of, if it was in the ladies' toilets, we would always say, do you mind? And it was always, oh, go for it. Yes, no problems. Absolutely. Here, go to the front of the queue. So, I think and a lot of it is about how comfortable you feel in a country, is about how the people you interact with, interact with you.
Yeah. It makes all the difference, doesn't it?
It does.
All the difference. I remember, holidays when I was a child with family, we'd all be sat round the pool and there would be lots of people staring or, checking things or sort of walking past slower next to you and things like that. And all the children around the pool would immediately come up and go, oh my God, what's happened to your leg? What's happened here? Well, can you still do this? Can you still come and play? Or can you still swim? And, and all the parents would be absolutely mortified that their children are coming up and asking all these questions. So I think attitudes in that sense, I think have got better, to be honest. I think people are more comfortable around things like that now. And I think it's probably because since the Paralympics and everything, I think amputees and people with limb difference were sort of out there a bit more. So it's becoming slowly a little bit more, don't really like the word, but normal. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of, we're not hiding away, which is really great. Gary, what about you? Have you noticed anything with attitudes when you're travelling?
No, I've found everyone to be fine wherever we've been, really. No, most people are really helpful and no issues. So I've certainly not been anywhere where it would put me off going because of attitudes or anything.
Yeah, that's really good. Good news. So how has travel influenced your confidence or your independence since becoming an amputee? Alison?
Well, I've always, like you, I've always loved travelling. I love going to an airport.
Yeah, I do. I love it, Alison.
Just watching people and thinking, where are you going? And that kind of thing. And I was fortunate to do a lot of it during my career. So I have that general confidence of what happens in an airport and, what happens on an aeroplane and that kind of thing, which I think helps you if you're not used to that. And then you're going to start doing that when you've got accessible needs. I think that's probably a real challenge. But having said that, I think I would find it incredibly difficult. I've not travelled on my own. I'm kind of not sure I'd ever be confident enough to do that again, although I did do it a lot during my career. But I think I would find it incredibly difficult if I wasn't able to travel. I think that would really put me into a downward spiral in my mental health if I wasn't able to. Yeah,
I think it's something to do with that independence, isn't there? And although even if you're going with someone, it's that feeling of I can get out if I need to. I can have a change of scene, and
that's like, you see, it's like a bit of a double-edged sword for me, because although I love travelling and I love being able to do it, it is a huge reminder of what I can't do on my own anymore. And so, it is that I love doing it. But on the other hand, there's always just that little, that bit of it as well. But, we never know.
Do you find the positives, they obviously outweigh the negatives for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good. Fantastic. And Gary, how about you? Did your confidence change after the amputation?
No, I don't think so, really, because I guess I'm kind of lucky in that my amputation was a motorcycle. Thinking about it, it was, one day I was fine, the next day, I was an amputee. And kind of mentally, I was it was all about recovery and getting around doing things, and holiday was part of the journey, if you like, a next step on the thing. One thing I would mention that some people might kind of find is certainly in the airport, every time I go through the security, I'll trigger the alarm with my prosthetic, which I find, you just accept it, but it is a bit irritating when you've been searched for, the umpteenth time. But, if anyone is a bit self-aware, then you need to be prepared that that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting when you're going through that security, about the people that are working at that part of the airport, because I've been through before where I've gone through and they've said, oh, you know, you need to step to the side because I've beeped going through the sensor. And I've said, I'm an amputee, so, you know, put my trouser leg up or whatever and prove it. And they some of them get really flustered and they're like, oh gosh, yes, no, of course, I'm so sorry. Yeah, oh, through you go. Other people are very much, well, yes, you may well be, but I need to double check. And there was one time I'd travelled loads and it had always been one of those, just, yeah, we're just going to double check. And then this one time I was taken off to a side room and I was like, I don't know what's happening, what's going on. And it was really, really nerve-wracking. I got really nervous and anxious. And, you know, this lovely lady came in and said, oh, no, we put you here, just thought you'd be more comfortable showing us your leg so we can double check in a side room. I was like, actually, it was the opposite. You've terrified me. But yeah, that's fine as long as everything's okay.
It's funny you say that. I normally go through and say, I'm an amputee, that's why I've gone off. But I just kind of thought one time, let's not say anything and let's just leave it for a surprise for someone patting me down.
Yeah.
And they all took it in the stride. You know, it was kind of just my warped humour, I guess.
We've got to keep it interesting somehow, Gary. What about you, Emma? Have you noticed differences in Lee with his confidence travelling?
Enough. I go back to that first holiday. So it was a 2-week holiday that we just booked. It was ridiculously cheap as well. And he had always worn joggers out and about or trousers out and about. But when he was on holiday, he wore swim shorts and shorts. He very rare, until we started Still Bones, he didn't wear shorts or he wouldn't go swimming in the UK. But I said to him, why is that? He said, when I'm abroad, I'm happy to do that. But in the UK, I mean, he's not a swimmer anyway. It's not like it's holding up his life. So he's not inclined to do that. And I wouldn't say he's even a short wearer either. But since Still Bones and since that first trip, I think that boosted his confidence in terms of being an amputee almost. I think what he struggles with is all the questions. You know, people are on you, aren't they? And they're only being friendly, but you know, you get to know Lee is someone who people like to talk to. He seems to, people go over and chat to him and he's like, I'm just sitting in the pool. Look, I just want to chill and relax. So it's lovely, and I think it does him the world of good as well. But they will always ask, have you been in the army? And he's like, no. And it's nice to be asked as well, rather than a question, rather than looks. So it's hit and miss. But yeah, in terms of his own confidence, it's definitely helped. And I think as well, when we were on our honeymoon, we were on a Disney cruise around the Caribbean, and we stopped at the Disney Castaway Cay island, which was amazing, Castaway Cay, and he was determined not to get in the Caribbean. But it was one of my dreams. We had little Ted with us, that I would have all three of us in the ocean together, and it was one of my happiest memories of my life, I have to say, I think. And he was like, no, Emma, it's going to be too much. I want to be worrying about it's too much for me or everyone else. Like, no, I don't want to be a problem. So I told the cruise person who was there with us, well, they just went above and beyond. They went and got this big rubber, too much to Lee's discontent. Big rubber ring, got him onto the stand, and we all were in the rubber ring together. And he does love it. He loves it now. He was so pleased it happened. But I think that helped him to realise he still won't quite accept it, but it is okay to, you know, it is a bit different for all of us, but it's fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can still enjoy these things.
Yeah, it's nice going with other people, isn't it? I mean, I've gone to places on my own and I've been absolutely fine, but it is nice going because I think other people give you a little bit of just extra confidence. So things like, no, I couldn't get in the sea. Well, you know, if I had someone with me, they're like, of course you can, come on, and I've got wonderful memories of being a child just on UK beaches, you know, someone, mum or dad or someone saying, oh, to the lifeguards, can you just come and help my daughter get in? And of course, there's these big strapping lifeguards carrying a 10-year-old me down to the water. I was like, oh, this is awful. I hate it.
But you didn't when you was 13, did you?
I'd do it now if I could get away with it, Gary. Things like that. And like you say, people really want to help, don't they? And just help you make the most of what you want to do. I
think you have to accept it. It's strange what Emma said about the rubber ring, because when I was in the Caribbean, I was out in the sea. I got a wet leg, and there was kind of one bit of the water really steeped a lot, and I kind of fell over, and immediately like 3 or 4 guys come running over and pulling you up, and you think, yeah, I know my reaction was, I can do it, I'm fine, but people just want to help, and you've got to be kind of nice and just accept it sometimes, even if you feel you don't need it.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you do, don't you? Obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's being aware of that, isn't it? And however much, I know Emma was saying, on the whole, amputees are very much, no, I'm absolutely fine. I can do it myself. I can get through that. Absolutely. Don't need to think about it. But there will come a point where you think, oh, actually, yeah, go on then. If you could just give me a hand, that would be really helpful. And just to be aware of that and, look after yourself as well is really important, isn't it? So I think we've sort of covered this, but just a little bit extra about how to navigate airports, public transport, new places you go. I know earlier this year, like I said earlier, I went to the Isle of Wight, and it was my first solo trip for, goodness, years and years and years and years. I booked the ferry, and I was nervous about kind of getting myself there, finding the place, because I was on my own, didn't have that little bit of backup. But I think once I got going, I actually really enjoyed it. And it was quite nice to be able to please myself and do things I wanted. A lot of the places I went to, I kind of did a quick research. But in my mind, I was like, well, I want to go here. I'll go. And if I can't get in, or if it's not accessible or something, then it's not the end of the world, it's fine. But a lot of places I found were really, really good and very helpful. Like if you had any questions about anything, I went to Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, and they had a lift. So the upper floors were accessible to me as well. Everywhere was paved, like all the pathways and everything. If I had to use my wheelchair, I could still get to everything. And I was really impressed. And during the summer, I took my 2 children to Stonehenge. And again, the paths all around Stonehenge, they were all properly paved and accessible for wheelchairs. There were ramps everywhere. I did notice when we were looking around, and we'd kind of walked around the stones and then were sat just looking up and talking about it all. And there was a lady that came up with her family. She was an amputee, which both my children were like, look, it's just like you. I was like, yeah, okay. They're with their family. Just give them a minute, it's fine. But yeah, to get to the stones, she was straight in, and they had a separate entrance for her, so she didn't have to kind of go the full way round. She got straight up to the stones and stuff, and things like that. I was really impressed with. But yeah, so are there any tips for navigating new places, or like things like public transport? Can be quite tricky, can't they? Particularly if you're in a place that you don't know well. Gary, any ideas?
I think certainly if you're in a wheelchair, some places can be more difficult. Athens comes to mind. They don't seem to have as much accessibility as other places, but most places I've found to be pretty much like the UK as regards getting around and accessibility. I don't think it's something you should generally worry about too much. I think most people in most places you can manage.
Yeah, fantastic. Emma, were you about to say something then?
Just going to say, time. Give yourself time. So always, we're not always the best of it ourselves, but I think if you just give yourself another little bit of time, you can just take a breath, can't you? I think things become so much more panicky and anxious if you're in a rush. I know Lee feels that a lot if we're going somewhere, and we're running like we're already late, but just to have that time just to sort of take the sit down if you need to, just to look at the map again properly instead of going round and round in circles. I think time is really important. And book in whatever, I would definitely say that, book in whatever help you can have, just to take, if there is an entrance, just take it for now. You might not need it at the end of your visit. You might be able to just go around the normal, but rather prolong your time and your energy to, and it's different for everyone. Everyone has to find their own way about these things and what suits them.
Yeah. How about you, Allison?
This sounds like a really obvious thing to see, but I think sometimes you do kind of forget, but that you can't expect everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect when you were able-bodied. Things would go wrong. So why would it be different now when, maybe controversially, you can always expect that things are going to be a little bit more difficult. So just try not to get too frustrated when things don't go quite the way that you would expect them to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's having those realistic expectations, isn't it? Even going out with friends who are able-bodied and things. I don't know, if we take the children out for a day or something, and you have a big idea, don't you, of this is going to be a great day, everyone's going to have loads of fun, it's going to be amazing, and then you're 6 tantrums in, everyone's eating the snacks, everyone, you're just like, do you know what? Let's just live it as it is now, rather than what we think it should be. Yeah, absolutely. So, what of all the places that you've been to, what destinations do you think have been the most welcoming or the most inclusive, accommodating? Emma?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be, but I call it Disney. I don't say Florida because Disney were just unbelievable. If you're staying on a Disney resort, there's you hired a mobility scooter and you have the buses to and from the parks, and you just have a queue. You can just get in and out of these accessible buses on the scooter. There's a bit of waiting around sometimes if they need another bus, but that's fine. That's not a problem. Yeah. Allison said you just go with the flow of it. But yeah, it's incredible. Interestingly though, Disney have reduced their schemes. We went in 2012, and we went just like, I think 2 years ago now. The first time they had a scheme whereby you would, I don't mean jump the queue, priority queue. And now they don't do that. So we did have an incident whereby, we had a situation in the Little Mermaid ride.
Yeah.
Lee got stuck in his scooter. In fact, 2 people got stuck in their scooters in the ride that had broken down because of this new system. The queue, because they could stay in their scooters, you see, so we didn't need a priority queue. But there wasn't enough room to turn them around and get them out. Of course, I opened the fire exit door and got them all out that way. Not too sure where we ended up, but we ended up backstage Disney somewhere. Quite surprised I wasn't chased down, really, but everyone was fine. One of the other gentlemen really needed a toilet, and he was starting to feel a bit ill. So yeah, it was get through the fire exit. But yeah, so I would say but it's Disney, so it would be a huge problem if they weren't. So I realise it's probably not the best example, but yeah, I would just urge anyone considering doing theme parks or going to Florida. I think that advice from Allison to just go with the flow. Don't get frustrated, feel yourself in terms of what works for you. Lee, I know, me and the kids stayed kind of all day, right through to the night, but Lee, he was struggling with a number of different issues at the time, and he would just leave, get on the bus and go home during the day and rest. So he was doing half days, or he'd stay home for the day and we'd come back and have an evening together. So again, that same thing, providing you're somewhere where it's accessible, just go at your pace. And Disney, I think any theme park allows you to do that as well. So yeah, that would be my
great. Thank you. Gary, how about you?
I mean, I think for someone for a first holiday, if you've got the money, I think a cruise is a great option because everything is laid on for you. There's generally pretty good entertainment. The food's good. Accessibility is really good because there's lifts to every floor. Generally, the corridors are wide enough. You can get everywhere. The crew's really helpful if you're having any needs. And, you can get off in the ports, obviously, but if you're not feeling that well, there's plenty to do by staying on the ship anyways. I think as a first place to try if you're kind of quite nervous about it, that would be an ideal choice, really.
Yeah, that'd be great. Allison?
I think out of the places that we've gone, it's probably Spain, and Spain including the Canary Islands. And I think they're just so used to having old age pensioners there. So, they're used to having people in mobility scooters or wheelchairs or whatever. So, generally, in the big resorts, for sure, it is just so easy to get around. And the hotels are all set up as well for you. So, it's not the fact that you're excluded from a bar because you find there's 3 or 4 steps. Absolutely everything is accessible. So at the moment, I think it's probably,
that's great. Good to know, isn't it? It's good to know that there are places out there that people can still go and it not be a really hard slog enjoy your holiday. It's really great. So what changes do you think you'd like to see in the travel industry to better support accessibility? Gary?
Gosh, that's a really hard question. I can't think of anything really. I think generally they do a pretty good job helping you and things are, there's nothing that kind of occurs to me, although, I guess, I'm not in a wheelchair most of the time, so I think other people may notice more than I do, really.
And how about you?
I think for me, I would just like there to be, well, two things really, or maybe three. I would just like people with accessibility needs to be treated in the same way as people who don't have needs. So we're not classed as being special. We don't have to go to the front of the queue every time, just so that you're treated, as you say that strange word, normally. The other thing I'd put is that I would really love it if there was a defined and easily available accessibility standard for countries, regions, states, so that you knew that when you saw the word accessible, that you knew exactly what you were going to get when you went there, instead of having to ring up and check and do all that kind of thing. And the third one, I think, is cost. I don't think, largely hotels here seem to be okay-ish, charging the same for an accessible room, maybe because we largely use Premier Inn and Travelodge because they're always reliable, but they charge the same amount, and it's not the same everywhere, and it just feels like it's a bit of a penalty for needing a bit more room. And none of us are asked to have accessibility needs, and given the option, we wouldn't have them, I think. So why penalise us for that?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's like Emma was saying about the caravans. They're so much more expensive, and you think, well, why though? It's just a family trying to go and have a holiday, just like anyone else. Yeah, it gets frustrating, doesn't it?
It does.
What about you, Emma?
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that, and I think there is something in different people's attitudes. We went on a trip to Scotland for Eggheads, actually, with some of the Steel Bones lot. And there was a bit of a nasty incident coming back on the plane, whereby the lift that allows the wheelchairs to go out. There was a gentleman, I think he'd had quite a bit to drink, but he was very angry, another passenger, having to wait for this lift, and really kind of laid into one of our amputees. I mean, the staff on the plane were absolutely on it. And I think that's a very rare, I know there are some nasty situations that happen, but the staff are very much on it. But I think there's something about people's attitudes, and I know we're not going to be able to change that. I think the cost is a huge thing. Insurance as well, huge thing, and I get why, but I mean, Lee was even he couldn't get insurance for any of his issues to go over to America, so it was we spent the whole holiday wrapping him in cotton wool, like don't go anywhere, we're not having any accidents. But he was fine, thank God. And I think there's that. But there's also something about people's attitudes. Even in UK, when we go to theme parks, the looks that you do get if you've gone forward, particularly if he's walking. If he's walked and he's got trousers on, so he's not. And I get it. But you just kind of think, if I'm in the priority line, there's a reason. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want to be. I'm not just. But we're all Brits and we're obsessed with our queuing, aren't we? So
it becomes a big topic. We could do a whole other podcast just on that, to be honest.
Yeah, we could. We definitely could.
And last question, I just wondered if any of you have got like a bucket list destination or an experience that you'd still love to do that's on your list, maybe for next year. Alison?
Well, I do have a bucket list destination for next year, but it's not my bucket list, if you see what I mean. So we're going to Australia and New Zealand next year.
Fantastic.
I would really, really, really love to go is Antarctica. So not because of my disability, but because the thought of being on that sea and having on that boat and having all that nothingness completely freaks me out. That's why I don't do a cruise. I know it's bizarre. I can get that an aeroplane with nothing underneath it flies, but there's something about a boat.
What?
Yeah. Very interesting. Gary, how about you?
I really fancy Costa Rica at some point.
Lovely.
Somewhere I've never been, and it's always nice to try new places on some occasions. Yeah, I think that's sometime in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. Emma, how about you and Lee?
We would love to get back to Florida, really, Disney again, to Universal as well, perhaps. So yeah, that's our big thing. Maybe the Caribbean as well again at some point.
Oh, why not? Why not? I think probably for me the next big thing on my list is I'd love to take my boys to Lapland. That would be just a lovely holiday to do together. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii.
Yes,
Hawaii.
But yes, it's
Vicki.
there.
Yeah.
Hawaii. And also, my list is quite long, but these are the top three. So Lapland, Hawaii, and I would love to go and stay in an ice hotel and then watch the Northern Lights.
cool.
I'd love that. So yes. So if, Emma, you want any branches of Still Bones in any of those places, let me know.
Yeah, I'm
more than happy to do a little recce.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll sort the budget.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much all for joining me. It's been brilliant chatting with you and getting your experiences and all your ideas. It's been a joy.
We are Still Bones, a charity serving the limb difference community in the UK. Our mission is to empower amputees and their families to live life to the fullest. It is completely free to join us, and you can register at stillbone.co.uk at the big blue button register at the bottom, and you can also ring us on 03333 606 930. We hope you enjoy listening to the podcast today, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.